Those of you who have been joining us every year for a long time know that Ginny and I actually sat on this stage together a year ago. It was a few weeks before you were named CEO of IBM. And of course, a lot's changed in that last year. At first, you were named CEO, and then yesterday you started this new job as chairman. So congratulations.
Thank you.
So Ginny, tell us a little bit about that first year. How's it going?
You know, I laugh a little with Jessi. She's got interesting timing, because obviously when I was here last year, I didn't have a clue, right? And so in order to have a clue, I'd be chairman when I was here today. So I would say fortune has brought me good luck and in both of these.
Well, what's ahead for next year then? I mean, it's got to be.
I know this is a problem. So everyone always, you know, I get that question. People will say, well, what's it been like? Actually, most people say to me, what's your biggest surprise? Is often what people say. And I have to say, this last year, and as John said, I'm a lifetime, for the most part, IBMer. I worked at General Motors a few years before, but I'm really, for the most part, 31 years with IBM. And so, of course, I'm proud, just like all of you are, of the companies you work for. But the last year, I've often tried to find a word to describe it. And the only word I can think of is energizing. And even though I had energy before, even if you could imagine that even more, because as John was telling you some of what IBM has become, I mean, talk about an honor and a privilege, and I guess it's the access that we have that I just never take for granted. And so, you know, in that first year, I couldn't even sum up all the things, but the honor we've had in things like, I was just in Kenya several weeks ago to open up our first research lab on the continent. And so we're the first big tech company to open true research in Kenya. You know, or another day, for my team, the ladies over here, and hopefully more to come on the continent of Africa. I'll come back to that maybe. But one day, it could be with a country like that. Another day, work we've done with cities like Rio de Janeiro. Another day, many of you as great global clients or clients from any part of the world, or helping IBMers become global citizens. I mean, it's a really long list, and so energizing.
So Ginny, we're going to come back to your strategy, but I'd love to hear a little bit about the actual experience of becoming the CEO of this company. What surprised you most about this last year?
As I said, surprise. You know what? The thing that probably, I'm not sure if it's surprised, but I will tell you a little story, and I think the word, and maybe many of you can identify with me, is it's very humbling in many different ways. And I can remember, and many of you that had sent notes and the like, which it's quite encouraging. But I will always remember a note I got from a client, a chief marketing officer actually, who sent me an email with an attachment. You know, sometimes you wonder, should I open up an attachment? You know, what am I gonna, what is this? And, but it was a letter she sent to me, and she said, I wanted you to see this, it's from my mother. And her mother had sent it, and attached to it was a scanned image of a 1928 IBM 100% club, and it was her mother's father at this 100% club sitting with our founder, you know, being interviewed. And, you know, in those moments, you realize how many lives you touch. And I couldn't believe, you know, 1928, her mother's father, and she had kept this all these years and was so proud of it. So that probably is as proud as I was before of IBM. I think that, to me, I said the word, it's humbling. You don't even realize it till you see how broad that has been. And with that then comes, you know, really quite a recognition of an obligation that you have in front of you. As I think John said, this starts our second century. So we are 101 this year.
So Ginny, and to that point that you make, you have such a reputation for thinking long term. You, IBM, the company, right? And a lot of people start their careers at IBM and they work there their entire career. You nearly did that. You're a company that has had, I mean, you're the 9th CEO.
Is that a lot or a little?
In 100 years?
Okay, good, a little.
What would that be, the average tenure? Sometimes something like 7 times the average tenure of a typical CEO. So how do you think about keeping that long-term thinking sort of front of mind going forward?
This is something, and I've sat in your shoes in these conferences before, and I've often thought, as I've listened to somebody, is there anything they could share that maybe I could take away? And I would give you maybe one thought that I think is crystallized in my mind on this topic about the long term. And because part of it is I get the honor of taking over a company that is a strong company. And so a clear way forward. We've talked about markets we're making around cloud, analytics, smarter planet, the growth markets. So very clear. But as I think for those of you that might have been here, were people here last, how many people were here last year? Is that a fair question? Everybody. Oh my goodness. Oh my, I can't repeat anything. But what you think about, I think I was going to say what I said last year was one of the great things that I thought I learned from both Sam and Lou was this point that no matter what, you've always got to focus on reinvention, right? Never love something so much that you can't let go of it, and you have to reinvent. And so to this point, so easy words to say, but I think over this year, something's crystallized in my mind is about a way to reinvent a company. And it's this idea of something called strategic beliefs. And I actually think strategic beliefs could end up to be more important than strategic planning in this day and age, about how do you keep the long view sort of in your mind. And just sort of in a nutshell, clients would often say, well, what's your strategy? And I would say, ask me what I believe first. That's a way more enduring answer. And in the world you and I live in now, where everything is changing so quickly, can't predict everything, and this is probably the most important and most of us have workforces that are very bright, very intelligent, want to be engaged in a broad way. This idea of a strategic belief saying, if you can agree amongst the firm for the future, some really big arcs of change, I would call them. So, for us, one of them is this era of cognitive computing about to start. You could believe that, and then with really smart people, they try things, they experiment, some of them work, you codify them, put them in management systems, you react to what happens. And if you can align everyone around a couple of those, it's a very, I think, energizing and inclusive way to create a long-term strategy without having to worry that you've exactly called every specific point right here, but sort of these directional arcs. And that's probably one of the biggest things I think all of us as a team have learned over this year about how do you keep reinventing, right? And don't take for granted where you're at, so keep kind of a long-term view, is that thought.
So the reinvention aspect, you have always championed having that happen and happen fast. And one thing that really struck me when I was reporting this story is thinking about the size of IBM's workforce. You employ 400,000 people across the world. People are constantly coming. How do you keep everybody in line with your ideas, with your strategic beliefs, as it were?
Yeah, and this is, I think, again, I think this is about sort of the future of most companies, this idea of you're going to get some of your best ideas from inside, inclusion, everybody sort of aligning, giving input, arguing with each other, and you do coalesce. It doesn't mean you sort of let every flower bloom and things go wild. They're channeled down certain directions. And so with that number of people, two challenges. So one is, how do you keep people vested in that and that they really feel like they have some input? So we have used within IBM social business in our way, and it has been a wonderful way to integrate people and have them both have a say, a debate, and an alignment across these ways. And IBMers have participated in the hundreds of thousands in this kind of idea and are used to it.
By social business, you mean a lot of the social networking software that we
But enterprise-wide, enterprise strength, of course we make products for that, connections and the like, and we use them internally, and to connect with clients and suppliers and the like that's out there. So that idea about how to bring the troops together with one other thought. The other thing is, I think, what I see in our workforce now, people really do want to work for a higher purpose, in addition to what they do every day. So this clarity about what is your higher purpose about what you do, I think is the other thing that is a very enduring thought. And for our team, they're quite clear about that. It is very motivating. I always say to them, you don't always come here for money. This is bigger things, is your ability to impact. And that's what I think, between that higher purpose and then everybody engaged.
So we're going to cut to the audience for questions in just a few minutes. Prepare, guys. But I want to take prepare women. But I want to take a step back and just talk about character for a second, Ginni. I mean, you have established yourself as a leader that we all admire. And I'd love to hear a little bit about what shaped your earliest character.
Well, I'm probably not too different than lots of ladies in the room. And Jessi had mentioned this in the article, is my mom. And I suspect if I asked, if I asked you to raise your hands, how many of you feel your moms have had a tremendous, that's right, so we all, maybe a tribute to all our moms, right? I mean, because she mentioned my mom was a single mom. And I always say the three things my mom taught all of us, she never said any of them. And it was when, the day here she was as a single mom, and she hadn't had a job, she hadn't finished college, she had 4 of us, and people make a decision what to do at that point. And what we watched her do, she went back, she worked at night so she could then go to school, so she could get us to be safe and go forward. And it's my brother, he always says, Mom taught us by her actions. She never said anything. And so I think actions speak louder than words is the one thing I think I always took from my mom. And to this day, I think about that in everything I do. And the second thing, I think about that, she did some things that were unbelievable. So nothing's insurmountable after that. You come to believe nothing is insurmountable. And I think the third thing she taught us was you define yourself. Don't let others define you. You define yourself. And those probably, maybe they match the lessons your moms have taught you. But I will be forever thankful to my mom. And all 4 of us turned out okay. So
I would say you all 4 turned out better than okay.
Well.
Let's open this up to the audience. Do we have any questions? We'll start right over here.
What's the worst mistake you've made in your career?
So the worst mistake you've made in your career, and may I get your name? I knew it's Karen.
You know, Karen. Well, let's put it this way. I've made lots of mistakes. Probably the worst one, I would say they tie. It's either when I didn't move fast enough on something or I didn't take a big enough risk. And I can think of multiple times. I mean, the worst mistake, guys, I do guys too as gals, I do it. The worst mistake to me, though, is you don't learn from your mistake. That is no greater sin than to not learn from it. And so I would say that has been the worst mistakes, when there have been times with either it's a market or something we were building or creating, that I either was slow or that for some reason, the way I just didn't take enough risk on it. And so that's always sort of in the forefront of my mind, which would be the recommendation when I'm mentoring folks. I would always tell them, and we talked about this last year, take a risk, Those that always, or the almost mistakes were when I didn't take a big enough.
So Ginni, to move that forward a bit, when you take a mistake, how do you personally make a mistake? How do you react to that? How do you integrate it?
I like everyone here. I mean, I'm big on, even with our whole team, it's always about what was the lessons learned. Something didn't work out, what is the lessons learned? What is lessons learned? When I'm sitting in the audience listening, it's always, what lesson learned can I take away? What can I take away? And I think it's that idea of, if you are very confident to admit you always have something to learn. If you are confident to admit that, it will help steer your way.
Anybody else in our audience? All the way back there. Do we have a mic for you?
Yeah. Ginni, one of my favorite business documents is policy letter number 4 by Tom Watson Jr. in 53 6 months before Brown versus Board, where he said, all people of all abilities belong in this company. And I think you guys are such pioneers, and we look at IBM and talk about IBM at Google, the things you've done with Diversity 1.0, 2.0, and now Diversity 3.0. Can you talk a little bit about the work you do to get more employees, suppliers, customers, and get everyone thriving, and how you do that at IBM?
You know what? If I could pick just one path and maybe an idea here, today when I think about diversity, I absolutely think about the word inclusion. And I think this is a time of great inclusion. It's not men, it's not women alone. It is, whether it's geographic, it's approach, it's your style, it's your way of learning, the way you want to contribute, it's your age. It is really broad. And so to me, and it's global in scale. This is a really important difference. And so one of the things that we have done to help build what I call global citizens, and I suspect many of you have to do this, and it has been a great success, so I just throw it out here as an idea. We had started something called the Corporate Services Corp. Now, it was modeled after the Peace Corps from long ago, the 1960s. And the idea was, in this modern day and age, how do you get IBMers around the world to be global citizens, globally aware, contribute, understand how to work in that environment, but do it on scale. And this program, we form teams, they're multidisciplinary, and actually, by the way, now we do it, clients join us on this too, and 6, 7 people, and we've done well over 100 of these. And as an example, it could be something like infant mortality in Nigeria. We have worked on the food supply in Chiang Mai and Thailand. I mean, these are very broad things that you go work on, and they have to do their real jobs at the same time. But these have probably been the most life-defining experiences that most IBMers ever have. And their recognition, as someone told me, I thought I'd discover a lot about the world, and I discovered a lot about myself. And this idea, to me, is what drives inclusion with people's awareness. And so it's an easily replicable program. I'd offer anybody interested in it, we'd be happy to share it with you as a way to both give back and get your people skilled.
So I think we have time for one more question. All the way in the back row. Is that Colleen?
It is Colleen. My question is, how do you actually reward and recognize both risk and innovation? I mean, you say take risks, but it's interesting in the company of your size. How do you know people are taking those risks, and then how do you reward and recognize them for doing so?
Yeah, that is a great question, because here's my biggest short piece of advice on that, is I think one of the most valuable things anybody can do in reinvention is make markets. And this idea of getting the team to make markets and test them, fail fast, or move on, right? And so you reward people for, even if it failed, what did you learn? What did you move on? And so that idea, making, fail fast, go forward, is, I think, one of the biggest ways we've been able to advance that. And some of the great, I listened to all the ladies' introductions. One of the big markets we think out there is around chief marketing officers, as an example, with the future here and what I called cognitive computing. It's about, big data is one thing, you'll never be able to get through it all. It's going to be a whole era that's going to help you get through this, and everybody's job in a front office, chief marketing officer, a mayor, a chief of police, their jobs are going to be redefined by this. These are the kind of markets you want people test them, try them, move them. And so that would be my biggest recommendation on that.
So Ginni, we've talked a lot about this idea of cognitive computing, and I don't want to let us leave the stage without you giving us a little bit more about what you mean when you say that, because you refer to it as a third era, a really big deal.
Yeah, let me do this, because I think this is bigger for all of us. And it allows me to give you a quick thing on Watson, because I read some of the tweets and the others. People said, well, maybe I'll learn what happened to Watson after that Jeopardy show. And as I say, Watson has been in medical school. And so this, in a nutshell, you and I, in our lifetimes, this will be the third era of computing. The first was machines that just tabulated and counted. The second is program, if this, do that. Everything we use to date is that machine. Some do it faster, slower. This third era is because in this world of huge and big data, you won't be able to program machines. You'll never be able to program them for everything that they should know. And data will be uncertain out there. These machines will have to learn. They will have to be able to learn what is right, what is wrong, what is a pattern. They learn. That's cognitive, a machine that learns. These eras, by the way, they're 20, 30, 50 years each. So this isn't like it's here this week. But this machine, Watson, was the first one you saw. I shouldn't even call it a machine. What does it do? It's capable of discovering, learning. It's not a search engine. And so what we've done since we played Jeopardy with that is we have dedicated it to medicine. And we are working with Memorial Sloan Kettering, the Cancer Center, Cleveland Clinic, MD Anderson, WellPoint, and others. I would say right now it's probably, if I can use the word ingested, 80% of the world's medical data. And it will be first area we picked was oncology. And for certain cancers, it is a diagnostic tool for the doctor. And if you would watch it work with these doctors, we've gone into production with some, it is almost as if he's talking to a colleague. And the beauty of it, of this learning system is, it can tell you the percentage I think I'm right or I'm wrong. If you told me something else, what I would be perhaps more confident, and it can tell you why on earth I believe all of this. And when you think of things like, for cancer, some of you are involved in different areas, that is something where your first treatment, diagnosis, makes all the difference in the world. And if you could impact that around the world on how gold standards are applied or rare diseases are diagnosed, just one example, that's, to me, versus the word cognitive, a way better description of, I think, the world we're going to live in. So on one hand, we're doing oncology. On the other hand, we're working with some banks and call centers. So we have, sort of both. we've got two sides of the world covered here.
So Ginny, that's our teaser for next year.
Yes,
because that is a big topic.
He should be through medical school. Yes.
Well, and who knows what's going to be happening for you next year, given our track record. We look forward to it. Thank you so much, Ginny.
Jess, thank you.